Hello and welcome to another video. Today we are going to take things a little simpler, and I thought I would make a card showing you how easy it is to use some really simple materials to make an elegant little card with our what are called Stampin' Up notepads and envelopes. So the really neat thing about these is that when you actually buy them, you actually get a pack of 20 note cards and 20 envelopes, so they're really cost effective. And if you live in the United States, these are the smallest that you can send still through the post. So these are still mailable in an envelope, through the post, the USPS. So I thought I would show you how to make this today using some really simple materials. So let's get started. First, the star of the show is this beautiful set called Jar of Flowers. One of the nice things about this set is that it actually comes with a punch. If you wish to buy the bundle, you actually get to save 10% if you do. We're not actually using the punch today. I thought that I could use that in another video, but I thought that for today we'd just stick with nice and simple, and I'd be able to show you that, you know, if you are very new to stamping, you don't need to have everything that's available, and you can kind of work your way up. So today we're using this jar of flowers. Just two things to point out. One, this set has no sentiments, and so I thought that for today, because I wanted the focus to be the flowers, I thought I would use the Blossoms in Bloom stamp set, because it has such a beautiful arrangement of sentiments that it actually is like, they're all over the place. So you've got your happy birthday, just a hello, a thank you, which is what I chose for this one. Note, I upped my card just a little bit. I could have stamped the thank you straight onto the card itself. I could have put it on just a strip of paper, but I chose today to use one punch, and this is right here. It is called the Classic Label Punch. So I did use this, though, as you can tell here, I pre-stamped another one just so you can see. I could just, trim off the ends here and just adhere it as is. I also popped it up using mini dimensionals, but again, these are all things that if you don't have those handy, this card would look lovely without those things. So let's go ahead and get started. Oh wait, my bad. I forgot one more thing. So the other thing I wanted to mention about this stamp set, you can see these images here, they're kind of grayed out, and in your actual stamp case, they actually kind of match up over here to tell you that these three stamps are what are called reversible stamps. And so I have it here, for example. I don't think you can, let's see if you can kind of see it. Yeah, maybe like that you can kind of see it. This is actually all flat here. So for example, if I stamped my jar and then I wanted to fill in my jar with some water, I could do that using this. But at the same time, if I wanted to stamp it where it would just be an image of a stamp of water, I could do that as well. Okay, so just a heads up there. There are a lot of options there. You could try to fill in your jar if you wanted it to be a colored jar, for example. And then there's this nice little strip here that could be used to add a little bit of embellishment to your card. So for today, though, we are using our watercolor pencils and what is called a blender pen. I'll put it the right way. A blender pen, in order to actually blend those colors without having to have ink pads in all of these colors, which is definitely an advantage to this type of card. So let's go ahead and get started, and I will show you how to make this. So first things first, I stamped my jar first. I did check beforehand. The perk of these photopolymer stamps is that I actually held up these different stamps of the different floral images to see which ones would fit well on this card. So for example, this one here is very, very tall. You can't barely see it very well here. Let me show you here. So this one here is quite tall. And on a note card, which is shorter, that really didn't look as good as some of these shorter ones. So there was the sunflowers and then these kind of roses. So I chose today to use the roses. I thought that with our color collection of or watercolor pencils, they would work best. So let's go ahead and show you how to make this. So first things first, I did actually fold this ahead of time just because I wanted to make sure that when the card was folded that I could actually ensure that my stamped image was center. Occasionally cards, not just like just any cardstock, sometimes the score will be off just a hair, and I figured I did not want to have to worry about that. So for the card, because you are using a photopolymer stamp, I do recommend you use a pierce mat. You will not find an actual physical picture of it in the Stampin' Up! Catalog. They had originally thought that they would get rid of it. And then there was a lot of criticism on that, saying, but we use it all the time with our paper, our photopolymer stamps, so please bring it back. And so they listened, which was nice. So for this set, I am using the Memento ink. It is a water-based ink, so that does mean that when we use our blender pen, which isn't water per se, you still need to make sure that you let the ink dry all the way. And I'll actually show you why in just a minute here. Let me stamp both of them here. So I'm gonna just, the one thing to note here, and I don't know if you can see it, see here it's a little lighter. As I'm stamping, as I'm inking it up, you really do need to like move it around a little bit and make sure that there is ink all over to make sure that you're not going to have kind of a bald spot in your stamping. So I do push the card down so I've got less of a chance of having the ink moving. And then you let it sit and then you're golden. So the one thing I did do, and I don't know if you caught it at the beginning, I decorated my envelope as well. So while I have this stamp out, let's go ahead and grab that. Let's grab a piece of scratch paper so I don't get ink all over my pierce mat. And then I actually stamped up only a portion of it, and I put it in this corner down here. So I'm gonna do the same. And so you don't even have to ink up the whole stamp if you don't want to waste that ink. So I'm gonna just go ahead and do that, have it come off a little bit, and inked. So now we'll let that set and dry on the side while we do the rest. So the coloring for this, I did not want to do it anything kind of too mind-boggling. So really all you need to do is pick the colors you wish and then color them in. The benefit of using this, oh whoopsie, and look, I'm too eager. I forgot to stamp my stems. I wanted to show you how easy it is to color these. The one thing to note is that you can make it where you could have it where it's not going through the jar at the top. I actually did have it go up to the jar, and see, look at me, I'm not even following my own suggestion. Here we go. So I actually did have them go up to the jar line. And then the one thing to note, I noticed there was this little like white spot here. So I actually used, Stampin' Up! Sells these Stampin' Right markers in basic black, and you can buy this individually, so it's not in one of the bundles. And I actually went through and I like extended these stems because I kind of felt like you could definitely tell that they weren't extended otherwise. And I don't think that it is, and you could probably, if you don't have this, you could probably use any other type of pen that gives a similar look without it being too obvious that you did that. So for this card, I went with pinks as my major, I used what's called Flirty Flamingo. And in case you're wondering why I have this washi tape here, this is just some old washi tape that I found from like years ago. It's actually because Stampin' Up! Has two sets of watercolor pencils. And so one set is this is assortment 2 and this is assortment 1. And so because I didn't want to kind of use from both sets, so that way if you did want to get only one, you could know which colors. But there are other colors, and they are color coordinated with all the colors from Stampin' Up, so that does help. Not all of them are available, but I thought instead of using this Flirty Flamingo one, I thought, let's use the Cherry Cobbler. Let's make them red roses. To make this happen, really, all you do is just kind of fill it in. Honestly, the blender pen is going to do most of the work for you. I do recommend that you don't push it in too hard though, because if you push it in too hard, you might actually create kind of a crease in the paper. And if that happens, that's going to be a bit more harder to blend out. So I'm coloring it in. Notice I left a little space here where the inside pollen would be. On this card here, I added a little bit of this crushed curry. And I thought even though my flowers are red, I'll still add a little of that crushed curry here. That'll go well with the dark red of the Cherry Cobbler. So then I used the garden green. In this set, you actually also have the granny apple green, but I feel like that might be a little too bright for the red of the card here, of the flowers. So color in the leaves, and then I did try to trace them carefully here because I didn't want the green to like inadvertently go into the what would be the water. So luckily, even if they do, it's not going to be super duper obvious, and maybe you'll know forever, but you know, the person who you're lovingly giving this to won't. So there's that. So we've got our garden green, we used that. Here's Night of Navy. On this card, I actually kind of used it for these little baubles, but I think for this card, I'm going to set it aside. I think I'll still use the Gorgeous Grape, but I think I'm going to use it here on these pieces instead. That'll be fun. It's always nice to make the cards a little bit different too as you go. If you were to pick this pack of note cards up, you could even make card assortments to give to friends and family as gifts. That would make it really easy to make some really personalized things for your loved ones. All right, let's use the crushed curry on these little things, and then let's use the Cajun craze on this one. So, and obviously if you had both sets, you could mix and match as much as you'd like. And then the blue that I'm using for the water is called Balmy Blue. And I intentionally put my sentiment where the Balmy Blue line would be. And that was on purpose. I figured I wasn't 100% happy with how the line kind of came through right here in the stems. So it's like, well, how do I avoid that being an issue that I feel like other people could pick up on? And that's what I came up with. Boop. Okay, so with that, the one thing I would say, go ahead now that it's dry on here, color this in at the same time so that way you are not having to like be almost done and then, oh yeah, that's right, you never finished your envelope. The one thing to note here, and you may have picked up on it, the creasing on the card here makes a little bit of a line show up as you color it in, but the beauty of the blender pen means that it's actually not going to be an issue because the blender pen's going to blend that out. But again though, if you're pushing too hard, you'll leave too much of that color down and then that will be hard to blend out. So just something to note there. Okay, so we're almost done with the coloring. As you can tell, I'm not coloring it all the way. I'm just adding just enough color where it is visible, and you'll be able to see. The one nice thing about this is that the more color you add, the deeper the color is going to be on your card. But if you want to, you can kind of add various shades by having laying down more or less color. So that's really nice too. So now the star of the show is the blender pen. This comes in a pack of 3 and they last a really long time. I think this is like the second one I've used, but I use them sometimes for classes, which is why they'll get used up. Note that, see how it's blending out that color really well? I am going kind of in little circles, so that definitely helps. And then because I let the ink dry as I was coloring it in with the the watercolor pencils, the Memento ink isn't really getting displaced much. Okay, if you don't let it dry, I'll show you what it'll do. It'll actually bleed the black into whatever color it picks up nearby. So you do want to be careful with that. You could definitely use heat to dry your card faster if for some reason you really needed it done really quickly. So you could use your heat tool for that if you'd like. But as you could tell, we didn't let it dry too long, and it's still sufficient here. It's still doing a nice job not blending in that black. Okay, so that would be one key thing here if you're using the blender pen and Memento ink. If you chose to use StazOn, that would not be an issue at all. It would dry very well, and it would do really well with watercolors. The issue with StazOn is that it is very difficult to clean off of photopolymer stamps. So I chose to show you how to be kind of delicate, but otherwise use it with this. And then, so notice I'm done with all of my red. To get the red off, you just kind of wipe. There's no red on there at all. Move on to the next color. Let's do this purple. And notice here I'm just kind of, you know, haphazardly coloring it in. Haphazard. Doop, 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 doop. All right, get the purple off. Let's do the green. And then for this, I just kind of went over it, just enough to kind of get the coloring lines off of it. Not enough to inadvertently spread the green too far, but just enough to make it less obvious it was colored in. There we go. Get the green off. Let's do the yellow. And then since this crushed curry is actually darker than the yellow, I can actually just go right over it. And it'll actually, notice here, it kind of gave that crushed curry a slightly more yellow tone. So with that, my coloring is done with the flowers and the stems. So all I got to do here is just finish off that water. If I had wanted to, I could have used that block with the coloring, that full color stamp. And I could have used ink if I had really wanted to. That could have been another way. Notice here in this way, I'm intentionally not adding the blue on top of the green stems. That would not be how it would look in actuality. Oh, I did not wipe it off. I do wipe it off before I cap it, and then I always try it before I recolor things, just to make sure that I'm not going to stamp anything. So before I started, I did pre-stamp this. You just slide it into your stamp. Notice to unlock it, you just push it up and it comes right up. Line it, center it as you see fit. Let's see, that looks pretty good to me. Boop. And then you can pitch the little leftovers. And then I adhered this using mini dimensionals. These mini dimensionals actually come in a sheet as large as this, these are our regular dimensionals. These are actually leftovers from a paper pumpkin. And so because of that, I was like, well, I might as well use these. Don't want to let them go to waste. And so I just used 3, 1 in each side and 1 in the middle. Just like the regular dimensionals, you take off the paper backing and then adhere the card, the sentiment to the card. I chose to center it up as much as possible, and I did center it by the letters of the word rather than by focusing on the punch, just in case that was a little off. So with that, I've got 2 sets, 2 very different sets, and here's what I wanted to show you before we call it. Notice here, let's see if you can kind of see it a little bit better. Let me zoom in here. Notice the kind of darker tone here. That's in part because I realized my envelope was naked and I wanted to add some color, and I wasn't patient enough to let it dry all the way. So that is why it kind of the color bled a little bit. So let me know in the comments what you think in terms of which colors palette you thought was better. I did switch up some of the colors, so maybe that's something that really sold you on it one way or the other. If you like this video and you'd like to see more, go ahead and select the subscribe button below. And if you need to purchase any of these items, you can shop at my online store on my blog below. The link is in the description below this video. And you can add any of those items when you're ready to check out. Add this host code, and that will let me know that you are helping support me, and I can bring more of these videos to help you show, to help me show you how you can use your products. So if you've got questions, feel free to leave me a comment or send me an email, and I'll make sure to respond to you. Thanks. Have a great day. Bye.